Never have I seen anyone so beautiful and charming, he thought to himself as they danced. When the music stopped, the Sun Princess curtsied to the king and smiled at him so brightly that his eyes were dazzled. Before he knew what had happened, she seemed to vanish. The guard in the castle gate was called and questioned, but he had seen no one pass. The princess ran like a sunbeam to her dark shed. She took off her gleaming dress, put on her fur coat, smudged her face and hands with soot, and was once again Furball. When she entered the kitchen and reached for the broom to sweep up the ashes, the cook said, "Let that go until tomorrow. I want you to make some soup for the king so that I have a chance to see the visitors at the ball. But do not let one of your hairs drop into the soup, or you will get nothing to eat for a week." While making the king's soup, Furball opened the nutshell that contained the special herbs and sprinkled some into the soup pot. When the soup was ready, she poured it into the king's bowl. Then she took her mother's gold ring from the other nutshell and quietly dropped it into the bowl. After the ball was over, the king called for his supper and declared he had never tasted better soup in his life. But when the bowl was nearly empty, he discovered his surprise, the small gold ring at the bottom. He could not imagine how it got there, and ordered the cook to appear before him. The old cook was terribly frightened. "You must have let a hair fall into the soup," he growled at Furball. "If you have, I shall give you a good beating and nothing to eat for a week." As soon as the cook came into the banquet hall, the king demanded, "Who made this soup?" "I made it, sir," faltered the cook. "This is not true," said the king. "This soup is much better than any you have ever made." Then the cook had to confess that Furball had made the soup. "Send her to me," commanded the king. In no time at all, Furball appeared, all covered with soot and stains. The king looked at her and said, "Who are you, and how did you learn to make such good soup?" "I am a stranger in your kingdom, sir. I once worked in the kitchen of another castle, where I learned to make soup." "What do you know about this ring which I found in my soup?" the king asked. But Furball only looked at him and would not answer. When the king found he could learn nothing from her, he sent Furball away. Sometime later, there was another ball at the castle. Again, Furball asked the cook if she could go and watch the guests arrive. "Go," he grunted, "but be sure to be back in 1/2 hour to make the king that soup he is so fond of." Furball promised to be back in 1/2 hour and ran quickly to her little shed. There she washed off the stains and soot from her face and hands and let down her hair. Then she took her dress as silvery as the moon out of the walnut shell and put it on. Again the shed shone with the light of her dress. She appeared at the castle door as a foreign princess, just as she had done before. Only this time the king was waiting for her. He was so glad to see her that he would dance with no one else. But at the end of the half hour, the princess curtsied and vanished as quickly as she had before. Like a moonbeam, she slipped around the castle and back down to her little shed, where she made herself once again into the sooty little Furball. Then she returned to the kitchen to make the king's soup. This time, after adding the special herbs, Furball dropped the tiny gold thimble into the king's bowl. The king ate the soup with great relish, but was amazed to find the gold thimble at the bottom of the bowl. Again he sent for the cook and asked him if he had made the soup, and again the cook confessed that it was Furball. She was ordered to appear before the king, but when he asked her about the gold thimble, she only looked at him and would not say a word. At the king's third ball, everything happened as before. The cook told Furball that she might go and see the guest arrive, but be sure you are back in time to make that soup the king thinks is better than mine, he growled. Furball did not stop to listen, but ran quickly to her shed, washed off her stains and soot, combed her golden hair, and put on the dress that glittered like the stars. When the king stepped forward to receive her in the hall, as he had done twice before, he thought her quite the most beautiful maiden in the world. He knew he had fallen in love with her. While they were dancing, he slipped the tiny gold ring onto her finger. The king had asked the musicians to play the longest dance they knew, but the minute the music stopped, the princess smiled at him and was gone like a shooting star. The princess was out of breath when she reached the shed and knew she had overstayed her time. She quickly tied a scarf around her hair, threw her fur coat over her star dress, and began to put soot and ashes on her face and hands. When she reached the kitchen, she made the king's soup with its special seasoning and then dropped the tiny gold spinning wheel into the bowl. When he found the gold spinning wheel at the bottom of the bowl, the king sent for Furball. This time as she entered, he looked at her hand, and there was the small gold ring, which she had not had time to take off. The king caught Furball by the hand, and while she struggled to get free, the fur coat fell open, and he saw the star dress. The king drew off Furball's coat of 1,000 furs, and as he did so, her scarf came off, and her golden hair fell over her shoulders. Furball wiped the soot from her face and hands with her scarf, and stood before the king as the most radiant princess on earth. The king told the princess he loved her and asked her to marry him. "You have the beauty of the sun, the moon, and the stars. You are as clever as you are lovely," he said, "and I cannot live without you." Then the princess told the king her story, and he loved her even more than before. The wedding took place the next day. Everyone who had attended the balls came to see the marriage of Furball and the king. The cook, who made better pastries than soup, stayed up all night baking an enormous cake for the bridal couple. And the king and his new queen lived happily ever